Beautiful game. U.S. Soccer Federation presidential elections are coming up in March, and Carlos Cordeiro has announced that he will run in opposition to the incumbent Cindy Parlow-Cone. Now, you'll remember Cordeiro was Federation president 2018 through 2020. He resigned in March of 2020 after sexist language used by Federation lawyers in a legal filing was made public. That, of course, we remember, Herc, was part of the U.S. women's national team's equal pay lawsuit. So here we have it. Carlos Cordeiro for President 2.0, Herculez. Are you cool with it?
I mean, it gives us something to talk about, but it's not really cool if you think about it. I mean, he's trying to tell us that it wasn't his wording. It was a lack of attention, and he didn't realize that this, I guess, argument was going to go out, citing that science was the reason the women couldn't make just as much as the men, because they were physically not strong like the men, so they couldn't compete at the level of the men, which is just jarring to think about, that somebody can get to a position like that and have that attention to detail. He was also in charge when Kristen Press went to the U.S. Soccer Federation and brought up abuse within the Chicago Stars, and he did nothing. Sunil Gulati did nothing. And now he wants a second crack at this. He wants a second go of the apple. Why? Well, because it's the same reason it always is. It's money. It's FIFA. It's what he thinks he can do. It's what he thinks he can get out of it. And, you know, these are all the things that have made U.S. soccer what we hate, you know, in the past, and what we loathe, whether it's still in the present.
So credit here first to a couple of our colleagues, Caitlin Murray and Jeff Carla, who are, I believe, the first to break this news. Herc, I have no doubt that Carlos Cordeiro can win this election. He's a really smart guy, and I don't think he'd run if he didn't think he could win. There's a couple reasons for that. He's a real good politician. Remember the 2018 election? He was running against some big names. Eric Winalda, Kyle Martino, Hope Solo, and Carlos Cordeiro won. He also was critical in getting the 2026 World Cup vote to go the way of the United States, Canada, and Mexico. So this guy knows how to work his way around a room when it comes to the election. So I don't have a doubt that he could get elected, Herc. What I do have a doubt is whether he could govern. And what I say that is, you know, the election's not a popularity contest. He doesn't have to worry about fans. But when you're governing, you have to worry about fans. You have to worry about the press. And you have to worry about those relationships that you damaged in your prior time as the U.S. president. We'll get to that a little bit in just a second. But I'll tell you this, Herc. I am going to, on the are you cool with it for Carlos Cordeiro, I'm going to withhold judgment until we hear from Carlos Cordeiro. And count this as an open invitation to Carlos Cordeiro, Cindy Parlow-Cone, to come on this program, Futbol Americas. And I'll tell you why I want to hear from Carlos Cordeiro, Herc. Because we didn't hear from him last time. Huh? You can't be president of U.S. soccer and not talk. And I was on the broadcast on March 11th, 2020, and we invited Carlos Cordeiro to come on the air on ESPN and talk about what was in those legal filings. Instead, he chose to have me on air read his statement. It wasn't good enough then. We saw the fallout of that. He had to resign within hours of that decision. Can't hide behind statements. You want to be president, you got to do the interviews. I'll withhold judgment, but until you talk. The floor, Carlos, is yours. Check your DMs on Twitter. There's an invitation from your boys here on Futbol Americas. Now, somebody, Herc, that has not waited on their judgment of Carlos Cordeiro is U.S. Women's National Team superstar Megan Rapinoe. Now, when she heard news of Carlos Cordeiro's reported candidacy, she tweeted, after resigning under pressure, or resigned because he embarrassed everything and everyone with caveman levels of misogyny. Again, Herc, just a reminder of what you were talking about. The Federation's lawyers effectively arguing that women had inherently less ability than men, and that was the explanation for the difference in pay. So, shots fired from Megan Rapinoe. Are her shots off the mark?
No, I mean, they're not off the mark. Whether it was him specifically who came out with that plan or not, it doesn't matter. It was his presidency and his lack of attention that caused it to go out and utterly embarrass themselves, be embarrassed as a federation, be embarrassed as a president, and ultimately cost him his job. So warranted. What I will say, and I will let go, is the invitation. Oftentimes, we get a lot of complaints from U.S. soccer. Oftentimes, we get a lot of complaints from different outlets, different people. but none of them have been willing to come on. And if you want to complain on air. Come on here, and we'll talk about it. We'll be respectful.
So, real quick, because I think Megan Rapinoe is very right. Effectively what she's saying here, Herc, is, what Carlos Cordeiro has already done disqualifies him, right, from being president. And I think that if you want to make the argument that Carlos Cordeiro was president when these, and I'll be gentle here, regressive arguments were used by the lawyers, and that at the end of the day, the buck stops on his desk, and he didn't stop it in time, then you can say, look, Carlos Cordeiro is unfit to be the president, and that's totally fine. But there's something that isn't talked about enough, and that's the fact that those lawyers that were working on that litigation were under the oversight of a group called the Special Litigation Committee, Herc, a small committee with only 3 members, but one of those members, and this is very important, was Cindy Parlow-Cone, the current president of the U.S. Soccer Federation. So Carlos Cordeiro may well be responsible at the end of the day for what was in those legal filings. But the current president, Cindy Parlow-Cone, is equally connected, at least, to what was in those filings as Carlos Cordeiro, who was forced to step down for that.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPNFC 7 days a week, subscribe to ESPN+.